think it's actually also good for gaming as a whole. Because if you look at the kind of major platforms, the 360 or the PS3, the cost of development there is insane. It's, millions and millions and millions of dollars. And okay, you can't write it off again for absolutely nothing, but the actual development costs are very, very low. And it gives a bit more room to get back to what was happening in the 80s, where you did have individual one-man band development teams, guys like Jeff Minton, for example, and admittedly is still going somehow. You get back to that kind of sensibility where you don't necessarily have to say, right, well, this has got to get past 7 finance committees because this game's already cost $75 billion. It's simply, well, look, if I want the hero to be a talking carrot with a pitchfork, then so be it.
Yeah. And I think there's some clever projects out on the web. I can't remember the website right now, but it's an independent sort of game dev site where what they've done is, as a project, they've said, okay, a bunch of artists, if you want to create assets for some games, they're sort of doing these little festival kind of thing. It's like, in the first week, let's just get people to throw as many like sound clips and little graphic clips and all kinds of objects into a big pool, and then the next week, let's get little, any indie developers to grab all those objects and see what kind of games they can make out of them. And it's, I think in that kind of context, again, it'd be pretty easy for someone to use that sort of stuff, make it for the PC perhaps, but then go, well, hey, this actually was a lot of fun, people liked it, let's try our luck on the iPhone, that's it. But I think we might come around and ask some questions if people have any. Does anybody have a question? And they can come and, sorry, I can't see people. Yeah, come on, here we go, kick it off.
Thanks. So we talked about a lot about where gaming has come so far. Where do you think gaming is going, and what would you like to see in the future of gaming?
That's a good question.
It's an insanely open-ended question. It's a good one.
What's one thing? One thing.
Well, I think, I suppose the thing that's sticking out in my mind the most is digital distribution, which I guess has already happened, but I think it's going to blow up more than it has. I mean, I think not just services like Steam, but different communities, and I don't mean InfinityWar.net or anything like that, them trying to control their gaming experience. I mean communities like ModDB, making their own digital distribution service where modders can, upload their stuff and work together, and you basically buy one game in the form of Crysis or whatever, but you're getting 10 games because of this digital distribution on service, stuff like that. It's huge amounts.
Paul, do you have any ideas of what you think should happen next?
No, I like the surprises that come up. But look, I think mine are boring things. It's not about technology or gameplay elements. I think I'll leave that. I'm not creative enough to imagine that. But I want it to come down to the audience. And I'll talk about family game stuff again. If I want to play Modern Warfare 2 with my sons on our PCs, then what do I have to fork out to do that? And it's the same with licensing software. If you buy Windows, if you're a business and you buy 10, they look after you. So if your family is buying 3 or 4, well, why can't Activision or look after you as well? So I'd like to see, as the audience develops, the finance models, sorry it's boring, but the finance models develop to reflect that audience. I have to sign up to that bloody network to play online. And it always fails because I live in Australia. And I live in Sydney and I have Telstra. But at the end of the day, more models developing to make it easier for me to do it. It's easy for me to watch the footy, free TV, pay TV, or go down the street. It's not easy for me to play games, financially and otherwise.
You're more likely to buy second hand.
Yep.
If you go, actually I want to get 3 copies,
Yep.
And they don't see a penny of that, so yeah, you're right. It's like,
It's doing me a deal. It's thinking into the future. I'd like to see, the next thing is just thinking into the future to appeal to the audience. I can get a season ticket to go and see the Swans, or whoever. But I can't get a season ticket to play Activision's games for you.
But do you think that, given the activities of some publishers lately, do you think it's too long before they might actually start withholding the ending of the game, unless you have the little key in the manual, one-time activation only?
Yeah. What was it? I'll pay like $15 to get that extra content. Yeah, that's exactly what aspect too had that in box, yeah. Yeah, any other questions? Yeah.
Alex,
Is this on still?
Seamus, Alex didn't get to answer that.
Oh, come on.
I'm sorry, I'll step up. I guess actually what I'd like to see, it's a bit of a pipe dream because it's kind of been an issue for a long time, is a lot more risk-taking and innovation. I'm a little bit bored with both with playing games, but even just with reviews of other people who don't games where they can say, oh, it's like GTA, or oh look, it's another FIFA game, or another Madden, or another this, or it's a Prince of Persia style game, or what have you. There's nothing wrong with those games. They can be great fun to play. From a kind of family perspective, we have an awful lot of fun with New Super Mario Brothers Wii with the kids, for example, where a lot of places trash it. But they're kind of done. They've been done, and it's been a problem for a while. There's not I don't think there's quite enough risk taking. There's too much. Oh, we'll just play it safe. We'll make the game that's a bit like this. So Saints Row is very similar to GTA, or you get a whole rash of first-person shooter games, which after a while start to blur into each other. But this is not a new problem. If you owned any system in the 80s, then invariably there are about 15 different versions of Pac-Man on it. Some of them official, some of them not. And it's kind of travelled through since then. Street Fighter 2 had 4 billion clones, pretty much all of them awful. Some actual innovation, some risk taking, because I think that's actually where gaming has progressed. Until Carmack pushed Wolfenstein and Doom out the door, that kind of genre of thing. The first person shooter didn't really exist. That was where that spark started, with lots of poor clones in it. And and Grand Theft Auto, I guess, kind of did that in its own way as well. I just don't see that we've actually hit that next innovative step. But if the publishers aren't really willing to kind of go out there and risk it a bit, and fail a bit, there will be some games that are bloody awful as a result.
Do you think a part of that might be, one thing that's feeding that might be the tools to make games are becoming easier, and garage development is becoming more common? I mean, you know more about the technical side than I do, so...
On some platforms, yes, but I mean, it's still not an easy thing to have a good-looking 360 or PS3 game out there. We perhaps maybe more so. I know they've got their kind of small-scale developer indie things, but they're either impossible to come by here, or generally they're not going to look quite as good or be as polished. I don't know if there's a support for that garage stuff outside of some important platforms.
Okay, another question.
Looking back over the glory days of gaming, there have been many great moments. Bringing the arcade to the living room, digital distribution, as John has pointed out, and bringing gaming to mobile platforms like Nintendo DS and iPhone. With all these great moments in gaming over the years, which is your pick that made gaming the media powerhouse that it is in today's modern age?
Well, from a personal point of view, the pivot point for me in gaming was when I put Wolfenstein 3D demo on Mum's PC, and it was just, wow, this is incredible. This is, forget about it. And my wife, who's in the audience, can tell you that I haven't looked back since Wolfenstein 3D. That was it for me, because it was, like Alex was saying, we're just taking something different, just innovative at the time. There was nothing like it. I don't know if that was a universal influence. I think perhaps it was because of that creative innovation. But for me, that was the hugest point in gaming ever.
I suppose, there's a couple of moments along the timeline that you could say it blew up even more. Like you could say World of Warcraft was one, the Wii is another. But for me, personally, and I think probably for a lot of people as well, the 64, the Nintendo 64, the ushering of certain genres from the 2D era to the 3D era was done with such style by Nintendo, with Mario 64 and Ocarina of Time, the greatest game ever. I guess that's a very it's a subjective thing. That's a very personal view, but I think a lot of people would probably share that view.